I definitely went in with the mindset that I was going to win.
What did you find was the most difficult part of that prep?
The last week before my first show was by far the hardest part. You're just doubting yourself, like, is everything for nothing?
Was it completely untracked, or what was your process as far as that goes?
Essentially, for my entire prep, I didn't use a weigh scale. I didn't actually track anything.
What was the experience like winning the whole show and winning your pro card?
It was unbelievable.
What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, I'm joined by Tanner Thiessen. Tanner is a pro men's physique natural bodybuilder and a competitive volleyball athlete. Tanner and I actually know each other as we live in the same city and work out in the same gym. In our conversation, Tanner shares his natural bodybuilding story, including his very interesting nutrition approach over his last competition season, the experience of winning his pro card, the challenges he faced during the post-competition season, and more. I know you're going to absolutely love this episode, so let's get straight into it. All right, Tanner. So you're in the relatively early stages of your 2025 prep. How's the prep going so far?
It's been great. I started the prep at my all-time high weight, which was 207 pounds. And I can't say I enjoyed bulking very much. So every couple weeks, I was like, I'm excited. I'm excited to start cutting and just start caring more about what I ate, because for me, the easier part is cutting rather than bulking, where I enjoy more strict meals, where like you can have fun and enjoy stuff, but like with the goal of losing weight. Whereas when it's the goal of gaining weight, it's more of like, I just want to eat as much as I can because I get full really quickly. So if I eat dense, full meals, I can't actually fit in all the calories I need. So I typically stick to more like high calorie options.
That's interesting. You and I think, are different in that regard, as usually I love bulking. I can like never stop eating food, and I really struggle with the cutting process, especially
Really.
in certain stages of prep. So I definitely have more questions about that, and I want to know more about how your prep's going so far.
Mhm.
But before that, it'd be awesome if we could rewind. I want to try to get an understanding and learn more about your background with fitness and natural bodybuilding. So, if we kind of go back to the beginning, how did you first get into lifting weights?
The reason I initially started lifting weights was like I did it a couple times in high school, specifically for volleyball. It was always like you have to train to get better and stronger so you can play better. But in the entirety of high school, I maybe went like once every couple months or something. It was highly inconsistent. And then when I went to UBCO, I was training with the UBCO volleyball team, and I really wanted to be as good as I could be. So I had a personal trainer who was making me programs that would follow every month. And so I was consistently in the gym 5 to 6 times a week, um, for essentially an entire year, specifically training for volleyball.
That's awesome. So you initially got into lifting weights stemming from being an athlete, being a volleyball
Hmm.
player.
Hmm.
Cool. I played a little bit of volleyball in high school. I was probably the worst on the team, I suppose.
That's okay.
That yeah. We'll go with that. It's okay. The lifting weights makes up for it a little bit, but
Exactly. You're still huge.
so did you when you first started getting into the lifting, it was kind of sparse. You're doing it relatively infrequently, sounds like, when you're in high school, but you really got started getting into it when you were in at UBCO, so when you were in university. Did you start to enjoy the lifting more when you got into it more, or did you kind of still prefer volleyball over the lifting?
Volleyball for sure. The lifting was to help volleyball. So it was never, if I had a choice between a 2 hour practice or a 2 hour gym sesh, it was every single time volleyball. And even now, it's still, I love the sport, but I do enjoy lifting as itself. And then essentially in that first year, it was a lot playing volleyball all the time, lifting all the time. And after my first full year of doing that, I definitely was exhausted from the lifting. It was like every session would be, it wasn't bodybuilding focused at all. It was all sports related. So it was like long exercises, super weird things I was doing, lots of stretching all the time. So most lifts were like 3 hours long, and it was hard to get away from that. And I kind of got exhausted, to be honest. I took a few months off.
So it was like really, it wasn't like bodybuilding focus. It was like volleyball performance specific kind of lifting.
Mhm.
Got it. Did you find, so I know you mentioned it was exhausting. Did you find that you noticed that you built a decent amount of muscle, or were you mostly noticing that it was just specifically helping with volleyball?
Oh, no, I put on a ton of weight. I went from I went from 155 pounds at 6'2", which was essentially a bone rack. There was no meat on my bones anywhere. I was just super skinny. And then I put on 30 pounds of weight, not pure muscle, but weight by the end of my first year. And after that year, it was very noticeable to everyone that I was significantly bigger than than a year prior.
That's always a nice feeling. It's like you finish the last semester, you go away for summer vacation, you lift the whole time, you come back and everyone's like, "Who is this guy who's got like
And
all these pounds of extra muscle on his frame?"
exactly.
That's awesome. Okay. And to better understand like the timeline relative to where you are now, how long ago would this have been? So this is your first year of university we're talking about. Uh was this a while ago?
Yes. So I graduated high school in 2015, and I started lifting like consistently, essentially the August or September of 2015. So it's about 10 years now.
Got it. Okay. At this point, you've been in it for a while. You've been lifting for a long time.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And I know you're still playing volleyball now, and I've got more questions about it, but I'm wondering, especially considering like you really love volleyball at the time and you're doing the lifting, focusing on better improving your volleyball performance. At what point did it ever come across your mind to like do a bodybuilding competition, natural bodybuilding?
Do you want to know more so when I started considering it, or like when I said yes to it, I guess?
Let's go to when you were considering it, I guess, because it would be helpful to know when you started to, because that would kind of imply that you start to develop a deeper interest in the lifting itself, right? So maybe
Yeah.
we can start there to get a better handle on your background.
Okay, for sure. So, for 5 years in my undergrad, from 2015 to 2020, every workout was at least somewhat related to volleyball because those were really the only lifts I knew. A lot of Olympic lifts, a lot of plyometrics, a lot of those things. And then I wasn't playing volleyball with a team or anything for the later years at UCO, but I was still doing those lifts. And then when I quit, or like when I graduated from school, I then did my master's in UVic and moved out there. And my two friends there were Keith Arrington, who ended up being my coach, and he is a pro bodybuilder as well, and my friend Kevin, who he doesn't like sports lifts at all, really doesn't care for them much, but he did enjoy the bodybuilding things. So when I moved out there, I started training with him a ton, and to find a way where we would both be happy working out together, we were trying to do different programs. We were doing like a bunch of YouTuber programs and stuff like this, and nothing really stuck. But my friend had Arnold Schwarzenegger's like book of bodybuilding. And so we opened that up to like his initial splits, his like beginner splits that you should follow, not the like twice a day kind of thing. And we tried it together and did that. And the first week went great. Second week went great. First month went great. And we kept doing that. And they were very bodybuilding focused, which I wasn't used to. And now, like 3 or 4 years later, I'm still doing very, very similar splits. I've changed some stuff, but essentially it's the same concept from 4 years ago as well. So that's when I started switching to bodybuilding type exercises. And like, as I said before, being around my coach for a long time, I saw him go and compete as a pro and do that prep as well. And it was always like, oh, it would like, we'd been chatting about it. He's like, man, you should really do it. Like, it's awesome. And I was like, yeah, one day it would be like really cool. And that's kind of when I started being open to it. I would say about like 6 to 8 months into being in Victoria. So this would have been like around 2020 to the beginning of 2021 is probably when I was like, okay, this is like maybe something I'd want to do. Not specifically that I was ready, but it's like I was open to the idea.
Got it. Well, that's really cool. It's the new Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, right?
It's
That's
great.
the one that's like way too thick.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When I first started lifting, there was a really nice guy at the like the old school bodybuilding gym that I grew up training at, and he was just a really nice guy, and he gave me his old copy when I was in high school, and that was like what got me going. Those were a lot of the workouts that I
Oh,
tried
that's so
to do.
cool.
They're like really high workouts or high volume workouts in there.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's like
You're doing
insane.
4 sets of 15 reps, 12 reps, 8 reps, 6 reps. And if it's a really good set, you add a fifth and do 4 reps.
Yeah,
It's absurd. They're so long.
they're nasty. But it's funny, right? Like when it's the first thing that you're ever introduced to with bodybuilding, you don't know that it's considered high volume, so you just like do it anyways. But it's
Mhm.
awesome that like that was one of the things that you kind of used as a template to structure your workouts and even kind of still use. It's awesome. I think it's an amazing
Mhm.
resource.
I think
Okay,
especially for like people just getting into bodybuilding, is everything in that book great? No, but if you follow the book, you're gonna find progress. You're gonna like start to figure out what you like and what you don't like, and it's a very great starting point for a lot of people.
definitely. Yeah, you can kind of even just like pick and choose different exercises that are on there because there's a lot of you basically
Mhm.
don't really need anything outside of what's in there. But you
Mhm.
can kind of just trial the different exercises even and see what kind of works initially and go from there. But
Totally.
yeah,
And
that's
especially
awesome.
like with the higher rep ranges, it's really nice because you're not going to be ego lifting really at those rep ranges. You might like not be using enough weight, but that's okay. You're still getting in, you're getting the movement, low risk of injury. It's definitely amazing for like intermediate, beginner to advanced lifters still.
I completely agree. I think it's also nice kind of going along the lines of the high volume stuff, especially like for beginners. The high volume stuff can be really nice because it provides a larger opportunity to practice technique and practice
Totally.
the form of each rep. There's just more reps, so more opportunity to practice with all of that extra volume, even if you're not exactly training to what the scientific community would consider failure.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that book, he even says you should be he tells you how to structure your sets to have the correct weights. And it's never failure. He never states that once. He says within 2 reps of failure. Like you want to be very close, but you never want to be overloading yourself.
It's interesting, right? Like that book was written I actually don't know when it was written. It's the modern encyclopedia of new bodybuilding, but it was probably written what in
Like,
the early 2000s?
yeah,
Somewhere
for
around
sure.
there.
It's definitely not a new book by any means.
There's like photos of Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler in there, I think. So that would
Hmm.
be like late 90s or early 2000s, I think, right?
Hmm.
But it's interesting how like they were talking about the same kind of things that they talk about now, like how close to train to failure and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And there's different schools of thought on those topics, like how close you should train to failure. But it just goes to show that I don't think there is just one way of doing things that is best for everybody. Like you can take what's in that book and it can work really well for a lot of people, and then there's stuff that they're teaching in the evidence-based scientific community that can work well for other people. That's actually different than what's in the book. But anyways,
Mhm.
okay. So you were introduced to that book, and you kind of use that for templates for your workouts. You tried out a lot from it. You had a couple of friends that were also into lifting. You kind of got into like the bodybuilding style training with those friends. One of them ended up coaching you. Um, okay. What kept you driven to keep lifting? Like, did you say that at this point you weren't playing volleyball on a team? This was when you're in UVic. What was keeping you driven to do the lifting if you weren't wasn't supporting your athletic performance as much?
So, when I was at UBCO, at the end of that, I wasn't with the team, but when I went to UVic, I started training with the UVic volleyball team, and I was playing consistently with them. But I wouldn't say my work in the gym was specifically to help with that. I just at this point I had fallen in love with the gym, and I found it something very enjoyable to do. It was a really great way of connecting with one of my best friends. It was a social aspect, especially because 2020 was during COVID. There wasn't really much you could do, but you could go to the gym. You could um, work out. You could like hang out with a couple of people there. It was really nice for that time frame, and I had essentially not much to do, a ton of free time, and I wasn't really very busy at school because of COVID, everything slowed down. Especially, I work in research in chemistry, and there just wasn't much for me to do at the time because like so few people were allowed in the lab at the same time that I wasn't able to get training. Um, Other people needed it more because they were finishing their PhDs and I was just beginning. So really, other than sit at home or walk around outside, there wasn't much to do. So I just went to the gym all the time.
That makes sense. It's a nice environment too, being around other people that are also trying to build muscle and get better at lifting
Hmm.
weights, getting stronger. Do you think that is that your favorite part about lifting, is the social element?
Definitely. When I move on, it's really close because like the effects lifting has on my body, like my health, my physique, mental health, all of that, more so than social. But I don't know if I would get nearly the same results at the gym if there was no social aspect. When I moved here, I went to a gym that's now closed called World Gym, and I liked the gym. It was really cheap. I had some friends that went there, but I struggled so hard to find a community there. It was like I couldn't really meet anyone. I couldn't talk to anyone. It felt very isolated. So then I switched gyms to Global, where I'm at now, and I had a lot of friends there. And just lifting stopped being stale. I had more fun. It was just like overall a much more enjoyable thing with the social aspect added to it.
Yeah. I hear you on that too. It definitely makes a difference, um, having other people that you can socialize with in the lifting environment. I really like Global Gym too. You and I train at the same gym. I like it for the same reasons, and it's kinda cool. When did you first start lifting at that gym? When did you initially get your membership there?
I think I've been there for 2 years now.
Got it.
I think when I got back from Europe 2 years ago, I got a membership. So it would have been like 2023, November ish.
Got it. Cool. 2 years. So that's a good amount of time. You already had friends that were training there when you were there.
Hmm.
Okay, that's cool. I've been there for about almost a year, and I've been like, I had memberships at 2 or 3 other gyms in the Kelowna area, and before that, I had a membership in Vernon when lived in the other end of the Okanagan. But I'm finding that now that I've been there for longer, I'm getting to know more people there like you, and,
Nice.
yeah, it's more enjoyable the more you get to kind of say hello and recognize the same people each time you walk in.
For sure.
Um, okay, so going back to UVic, you're training you were also doing volleyball, you were enjoying the social element of lifting, but you were also liking the muscle growth, getting stronger, the health benefits of lifting. When did you really start considering the bodybuilding prep at this point?
It wasn't until I moved to Kelowna, because I had always at this point I was open to the idea, but in the summers I play beach volleyball on a tour that they have in BC here, and that's paramount, like my number one priority in the summers. So it was starting to get really um, constrained in the environment in which I could do a prep, and so my priorities were it couldn't be over the summer, because I didn't want to regulate the things I was eating and drinking. I didn't want it to affect my volleyball play. And so, kind of the only time that it could work out is like before summer, beginning of May to middle of May is like the only times I could do it, or a bit earlier than that. I didn't have an issue prepping over the winter. So in the back of my mind, I knew that's what it had to be for it to work out for me. And then just in January last year, I wanted to meet with my coach because I was like, hey, I know about this show. Like, it might be a cool, like, thing to do, but like, am I ready? Should I do this? Like, I needed some advice or guidance from my friend. And we were chatting about it, and I laid out, I was like, these are the things that I like about it, and I'm considering doing it. And he's like, well, what's holding you back? And at that point, I was like, I didn't have anything to say. And so he's like, so are you going to do it? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And I just didn't have a reason not to do it. And I told myself that, and others, that it's something that I would enjoy to do. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing it. And he's like, okay, cool. What show are you doing? I was like, there's multiple shows. So then he was like, yeah, just like sign up for both of them. So I did the CPA BC Cup, and then a week followed after that, I did the WNBF Kelowna Naturals because they were both in Kelowna, and just worked out.
That's awesome. You like completely went in blind.
Yeah,
Did you
basically.
so it was the kind of thing where you went into it and did you have any expectations as far as like how you wanted to place and like how you wanted to do, or were you kind of just going into it, well, we'll see how it goes?
I think if I had the mindset of we'll see how it goes, I would have never done it. Because if I went in expecting to be outside of the medal rounds, I would say it's not worth my time and energy. And so I definitely went in with the mindset that I was going to win.
Yeah. And you already, I mean, you're already an athlete, you're already a competitor. So if you're competitive with volleyball, then I suspect that probably carries over to the natural bodybuilding approach too, I can imagine.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Um, so how did that prep go?
The prep went incredible, actually. Um, I loved every second of it. I was hitting PRs in random things in my workouts, even till a month before my show. Definitely the month prior to my show was when everything started to get more difficult. I was depleted. Definitely the strength wasn't there. But up until that, I competed in open men's nationals for volleyball a month and a half before my show. And we ended up winning gold, which was great. And I felt amazing the entire time I was playing.
Wow. Okay, so interesting. So initially, I think you mentioned that you were trying to think about aiming your prep to be at a time that wouldn't interfere with your bodybuild or with your volleyball performance, but you ended up actually having a significant competition with the volleyball like at the latter stages of your prep.
Hmm.
Crazy. Did you find
Yeah,
did you handle it okay? Like was energy okay?
oh, for sure. That tournament, I said a month and a half. It was probably 2 months out. But I had lost around 18 pounds by the time I went into that competition. And it felt great. I played really well. Um, we won the whole thing, so clearly it was still okay. Energy levels were really high afterwards. I did do one beach tour event the week prior to the BC Cup. And I like when I went into this bodybuilding show, I told myself that I wasn't going to let this experience hold me back from social connections, hanging out with people, going out still, not drinking, but like going out at night, or sport events, volleyball, whatever it may be, or just any event. I didn't want to have the mindset that oh, I don't have the energy, so I'm not going to go to this. I always said, I can't do that. I'm not taking away from the rest of my life just for this. I still want to have fun. I want to be enjoying my time. I don't want to be 4 months of darkness and then I have a good day and then I go back to like normal life. The only way this was going to work for me personally is if it didn't take away from the other aspects of my life that I enjoy, essentially.
That's awesome, and I think that's something that a lot of people actually struggle with, and I'll speak for myself and say that in past preps that I've done, I've really struggled with exactly that, being able to balance, like, social stuff with not basically digging myself into a hole or, like, barricading myself into a cave while I do prep for months. So that's
Mhm.
actually something that I've struggled with. So I'm curious, how did you balance the maintenance of your social life, spending time with your friends, doing all the stuff with volleyball while you were still prepping with focus?
It came down to a lot of being very present and what's the word yet? Very determined with uh, with everything I was doing. So it would be like if I'm gonna go out, I have to eat my meals in a way that will prepare me to have the energy to be around people. Now, was I always like happy and nice and everything? No, yeah, I had grumpy days, and you definitely don't notice when you're in it. And my friends definitely remind me that I wasn't the happiest, but I still showed up and I still was out and I still had energy. The number one thing for that for me was meal timing. So important. I found every time I missed spacing my meals out, I either failed and ate something I shouldn't have, or I was very grumpy and upset, and I could very feel it. I could feel it like very easily. And even with the volleyball, so I played like the event a week before. Um, I had to make my meals very specifically and very specially tailored for that entire weekend so that I had enough energy and enough carbs in my system so that I could function while also not like spilling over or not having enough food so I felt like I needed something else. So I definitely like had more food than I should have at that point in prep, but my body needed it. And if I hadn't prepared the special snacks and stuff that I needed when I had it, even if it was over, I would have gone way over by getting food at restaurants, by getting like random stuff essentially. So just being organized in my life events and planning for those, I guess.
Right. That's awesome. So you're eating like with very specific intent to fuel the performance of things like volleyball, making sure that you're still as on track as you possibly could be with the bodybuilding prep at the same time. So there's a lot of intent around the structure and the macro ratios of your meals and how you prepped everything going into that time period. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's a good skill to have, having that kind of having the ability to enact that kind of structure.
I
Um,
honestly didn't really think I was capable of doing all of that stuff, but you do surprise yourself when you put in the effort, especially like if those things really do matter to you and you don't let yourself discredit them or brush them off and say maybe next time, then you find a way to make it work.
that's a super good point. It's true. What what did you find was the most difficult part of that prep? It's your first one. You
The
didn't have many expectations, but what was the most difficult part?
the last week before my first show was like by far the hardest part because up until that point, every 2 weeks ish, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how I felt, I had a cheat meal or a cheat day where I ate whatever I wanted. There was no tracking, no nothing. Just if I wanted to have it, I did. And I found that doing that whenever my body told me I needed it, because I wasn't on some set schedule for them, was so imperative to helping me then have 5 great days of perfect like meals and perfect things. And I found that when I got into that point of like a week out, I probably should have had one day where I had some extra food, maybe 2 weeks out, maybe a week and a half out, somewhere around there. But I just didn't. And so that last week, I really struggled to make sure all my foods were correct. And even though as we got closer to the end of the week, I was getting more fats, more calories, more everything in general, I was having too much because I was just like all out of whack. And especially, it was like you've been staring at yourself for so many weeks in the mirror, looking at everything that more not so like are people better than me, but you're just doubting yourself. Like, is what I did like is everything for nothing that I've been doing this whole time? It kind of like all of that started creeping up in the last week, and I'd had nothing to go off in the past, no validation, I guess. Um, in the sense of like me and my coach have been talking. He's happy with where I'm at. We're on the right track. But is that enough? I guess is like because you're also really deflated and depleted. Your muscles look tiny. They've never looked smaller in their entire lives. And you just have to stare at this the whole time, and it just feels awful. So I struggled with that week up into the first show, and then actually doing that show leading into the second show the week after gave me a lot of validation in what I was doing was right. And so that second week, even though it's another peak week, was so easy. I did it like perfectly, except for like the last day, which is a different story. But the rest of the week felt great.
So it was a battle with mind games basically, and self-doubt creeping in the last minute.
Absolutely, yeah.
How did you end up doing that? It was the BC Cup, right? That was the first one.
Yeah.
How did you end up doing?
So I went into 3 categories. True novice, which for people who don't know the categories, that's anyone who hasn't competed at a CPA show before. And then novice, anyone who hasn't placed at a CPA show before, I believe. It might be just in the novice category and open, but I think it also encompasses true novice. And then open, which is essentially just everybody. And in true novice, I came second to one dude, and then I won novice. And in open, I came second and lost to the same person I lost to in true novice.
That's awesome. That's cool. And you said you were really happy with it too. Like it was validating.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
did you have it's a local show too? Did you have like friends and family there um
Yeah,
watching, spectating and getting to
yeah. I
see you
had
on
tons
stage?
tons of friends or like people I know from the gym, other competitors, family was there too. That was really awesome. Having the support from everyone really helped. And my coach was there in the morning, but also a bunch of like his friends who were coaches were there too, and they were giving me a lot of good insight. So it was so awesome that it was local. I
The
definitely felt
entire
a lot of
network was
support.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Okay. Question that came to mind a little bit earlier. I know that you mentioned leading up to that first competition, you kind of had a system where one day a week you'd have a cheat meal or you like even an untracked cheat day. Um, did you ever like have a way of regulating like not to overeat calories or like really undereat? One of the reasons that I ask is or do you kind of like keep track in your head when you're not technically tracking on paper what you're eating? One of the reasons I ask is I know for myself, like I do something similar for my preps where I'll do like 1 to 3 refeeds per week, where it won't be like cheat days or cheat meals, or at least that's not the way that I conceptualize them. It's basically the same thing. It's extra calories those days, but I'll just plan out to eat like 500 to 800 extra calories compared to my low days, but it's still measured and tracked so that I don't go over. Was that something that, and there's different ways of doing this, which is why I think that this is so cool, the whole bodybuilding prep thing. So I guess my question is, did you really like go into those cheat days or those cheat meals? Just was it completely untracked, or were you trying to keep track in your head without like looking at an app, or what was your process as far as that goes?
So essentially, for my entire prep, I didn't use a weigh scale. I didn't actually track anything ever,
Wow.
and
Okay. Okay.
I so I've been really good. I did the entire thing essentially intuitively, but even on my cheat days, I wouldn't even try to track anything. I didn't really care. It was a cheat day, so I allowed myself whatever I wanted essentially.
Wow. Okay. So, what was your main metric for tracking your progress? Was it like you're just making sure that each week you're losing a certain amount of weight? Was that the main metric, or were you just kind of like checking and getting feedback from your friend, from your coach, just to make sure that, like, from a visual standpoint, like you were looking the way that you should look from one week to the next, or what was the main metric you were using to track your progress?
It was weight, specifically like losing whatever the weight target in my head was every week, was what I needed. Uh, so I didn't really the prep was interesting because I essentially did all of the workout programming myself and all of the food myself, but my coach would give me like macro points and stuff like that, but I never told him I wasn't tracking. So whenever he would give me lower calories or lower fats, I would just tailor my meals in a specific way. Say I needed less fats, I would either change the sauces I was using because they're typically a high source of fats, to no fat options, just no sauce in general, or something like that to decrease them to, in my mind, what the equal amount was essentially. Because I do have to preface that I most of my meals I have made in the past, and I spent 1 month tracking all of the meals that I made. This was like 2 years ago, and I know what that was, and that was essentially my maintenance and my goal for all of those. And then whenever he would give me an update or something, I would just change that little thing to lower what I needed to while having the overall picture in my mind essentially. So it's
Got
like,
it.
oh, you need to lose 200 calories. That's easy. I get rid of the chipotle mayo with my breakfast sandwich.
Got it. So you kind of had this idea of like what your baseline should be, and then if your coach called for a decrease of a macro nutrient or like your calories, then you knew, okay, I can get below my baseline by X amount if I kind of change my
Yeah,
foods in this way.
exactly.
It makes sense. It makes sense. That's cool. That's very
Hmm.
cool. Okay.
And
So that'll make
for one more point, to answer your question more, it was a weight target that every week or 2 weeks I would reassess. And I said to myself I was gonna start tracking eventually when I started not hitting my weight targets. But without fail, every week I hit my weight target. And so when it came to the last month, um, out like before my show, I was like, well, it's been this long. It would be so cool to say I did the whole thing without tracking. So then it was like actually happening that I wasn't going to track.
wow. Got it. Okay. Crazy. Okay, so that's your process, going through the entire season. You did your first show. You did really well. You got a couple seconds. And did you say you won the novice class and then you came
Yes.
second open, second debut? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Sweet. So, and great experience. You had lots of family friends there. It was like super fun time. It was very validating too. So like some of the
Mhm.
self-doubts that were kind of playing mind games with you, that kind of left your system. And then it was just 1 week later that was the WNBF Kelowna. That was the next local competition, right?
Yeah.
So you said this peak week was great as you're going into it. So you felt more confident at that point?
Oh, for sure. So for that one, essentially how I tailored like all of my meals for the entirety of prep was breakfast, lunch, dinner, protein bar, snack. And then if I feel like I need something else, like I'm not full and I'm way too hungry, I had like popcorners or kind of either high carb, no fat, decent protein snacks that I could choose from. And some of them were in like little already controlled bags. So it'd be like, okay, I need something, take a bag, eat it. I feel good. I don't need anything else. It's if I'm over, I'm not over by much, but I'm probably still under. And so for the last week heading up into it, I hit like all of those perfect 3 meals, one protein bar, and maybe a small regulated snack in there. And it was awesome. The reason I said the week prior was bad was because my something was wrong in my meals, that they weren't filling me up the way that they should have been, and I was like having too many snacks. There was, and you can't regulate snacks. They're really hard unless you're very intentional about them. So they would just drag on. I was having too many calories, basically every day, and way too many fats was the issue.
Got it. So you're really using your appetite as a metric to tell you if you should be eating more or less at a given point.
Absolutely, every day.
Cool. Got it. Okay, and this is where like the whole intuitive approach kind of concretely makes sense too. Okay,
Mhm.
interesting. And so does that mean too for both of these weeks, there wasn't really like any particular kind of a carb up or any like an intentional increase of carbohydrates before competition? It was just like you're kind of going by appetite. If I feel like I'm satiated enough, then I know I'm good for the day. Or was there any system for carving up for the show?
So we had when we had done some of the like cheat meals or some extras, typically carbs, my coach would be like, okay, eat this amount and show me what you look like later that day or like tomorrow. And so when we were doing the carb up, he was obviously adding like a bunch of carbs to my system or like to my program because each day he had individual fats, carbs, proteins for every day. But that's where it kind of got hard for me to mentally figure out because I was increasing and decreasing the values I'd already had, going into this to try and make it work. So essentially, for those like last 2 days, I was going off of prior cheat days and how much I had eaten on those to look good. But so I would eat like just a ton of popcorners or like just like a stupid amount, which is essentially just a popped chip. And that's all I used as my metric. And then I was like, so I alluded that the last day before my WNBF show, I had made a mistake and I had gotten a free meal at work and I work at Moxie's. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to get like a plate of mashed potatoes or blackened mahi mahi, which is like a salted spiced thing, and then like some sausages and other stuff. Uh, and because I didn't know how many carbs I needed, I just was like, oh, potatoes are carbs. Let's have that. And the mahi mahi really screwed up my stomach. Like the amount of salts on that were way more than I expected. And I go to see my coach like 3 hours later. This is like 7 p.m. the night before my show. And he's looking at me and I'm so bloated. And he's like, what did you do? What's going on? And at this point, I'm like, I can't tell him I haven't been
Uh,
tracking anything. And I was like, oh, I had like some stuff. And then I later was like, yeah, I had like a really blackened salmon. He was like, have you been eating salmon at all during this prep? I was like, no. And so he was like, what the heck? And yeah, essentially like the entire night into the next morning, I was trying to debloat like everything. And I finally got decent by the morning, but I wasn't able to eat as much food as I should have because I was still like inflated from all of the things my system wasn't used to.
I think this is really I think this is a really interesting thing for people to know and to hear how much of a profound effect a single meal can have on the aesthetic of your physique. Like a super high sodium meal that you're not used to, or eating a food that you're unsure of how you'll digest, how that can affect how much water enters your and stays, how much water you retain, and how much you bloat, and how much it affects digestion. So I think that's actually really interesting. That, I mean, it probably wasn't, you probably didn't consider it interesting at the time that it was happening, but looking back, it's interesting for us to be able to talk about how this had such a profound effect on what your aesthetic was at the time. And this was right before the second show, right? This is the
Yeah.
WNBF Kelowna. Okay. Okay. But eventually the bloat kind of settled, and then it was the day of the competition, and felt okay.
I felt great in the morning. My skin still looked like, my coach wasn't fully happy with where it was, because like the last week I was able to eat way more and fill up a lot more. So he was just being very careful. The next day, essentially giving me smaller portions of food, a little bit, essentially because I think he was pretty confident that I would do well. He didn't really want to add too much to my system to make me look worse. So he's just kind of letting me as I was with a little bit extra. And hopefully that was enough to do well. But it was
How did you
definitely not the best I could have been that morning.
Got it. That being said, how did you end up doing for that show?
So for that one, I won in men's physique. So I won my pro card at that show.
so so at the end of the day, wasn't the best peak in the world. Got pretty bloated the night before the show, kind of even the day of. It still didn't completely settle. Wasn't your best look, but you still were good to the point of like you ended up still winning.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Crazy. So what was that like? What was it? What was the experience like winning the whole show and winning your pro card?
It was unbelievable. Like I still had some doubt that I was gonna win when you're out there. Like when you go and they move you to the center, you do feel amazing, and that was like the initial validation I needed to really put my all out there that I was being seen. And when they eventually called me um, to win it all, I was like a little just shocked and wasn't really sure how to take it all in. And then they give you the sword, which I got a katana when I won. And I'm such a little child when it comes to swords. It was like I had done this because I thought it would be amazing to win a sword from bodybuilding. And just like that was my goal. Pro card is great and everything, but the sword was like my number one thing I wanted. And so when I finally like held that, it all became real, and like emotion definitely washed over me, and I was just like it was just incredible when all of that happened, and definitely just surprised me, and I was in shock for a while.
Not only did you win your pro card, but you also became the embodiment of a samurai with a katana sword. That's so
Exactly. I
cool.
don't know how they correlate, but it's amazing.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the pro card, meh, whatever. But the katana, heck yeah. Did you
Pro
have
cards are finite, katanas are forever.
I love it. Um was it similar to the BC Cup the week before, like lots of friends, family there? Was it kind of the same audience watching you?
Much less. My family came out, but I had a couple friends there, but compared to the BC Cup, there was like maybe 10% of all the people that had shown up there, because that was a much bigger event and a lot more people from my communities were competing at the last one.
Got it. When you said that, they called your name, you got the pro card, you got the katana, and, like, there was that moment where, like, your emotion did kinda wash over you. Did you like, when you set out to do the prep, I know you said that your initial mindset was, like, "I wanna, like, place in the medal rounds." Like, I would assume you wanted to come, like, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or at least top 5. Did you ever have the expectation or the hope that you would not only win a competition, but win a natural bodybuilding pro card?
I guess I did, because that's the goal I set out to do, and that's why I did everything. But to say you want that to happen and you expect that to happen, and for it to actually happen are completely different things. Like, I will always have the goal to be the best I can possibly be when I go out, and I can just hope that's good enough. And on that day, it was good enough.
That's so cool. And then what was it like from there? So you won the show, you won your pro card, and then you just celebrated with your family for the rest of the day. Did it take a while to kind of sink in what you'd accomplished? Or what did it like, did that feeling kind of go away quickly? Or what was that like, the time kind of immediately following the win?
It was definitely cool as soon as it had happened, and I think it took about a month or 2 months before that sensation and all of the buzz around it, like, died down, and then I would say after, like, 2 months, life was back to normal, and I was in the gym working out, playing volleyball. Everything was just the same again.
That's still awesome. That actually makes me happy. It took 2 months for that feeling to kinda die down a little bit. 2 months is awesome of, like, being on that kind of a high. So that's really cool.
Mhm.
Um, I'm interested in and I wanna know how your prep is going at the present, but I'm also curious to know what it was like between now, your current prep, and the time that you won that pro card. So that was about 2 years ago, right?
Mhm.
Did you
No, the pro
find
card was last year, this past weekend, actually.
my goodness, it was 1 year. Okay.
Mhm.
What was it like within this 1 year period of being in an improvement season or an off season? Did you see it as an improvement season of like, okay, I'm going to compete again. I need to focus my time on building muscle. I want to stay really focused. Or did you kind of think of this more as like, I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to train. I'll build muscle. And if that comes with like the fun stuff that happens at the gym, or what was your kind of approach between these two seasons?
So, I guess there's a few things to unpack with that because I went through a few different phases of my life and my training, I guess. The immediately post-show, I didn't have any plans to compete. Initially, I had never wanted to compete again, I guess, because just competing or prepping during the summer was never an option. And so immediately post-show, I went straight into my beach volleyball season. So I this is what I did incorrectly, and I will do correctly this time, was I had no reverse out of my cut at all. So I went straight to eating a bunch of food. My idea of that was I needed to replace my glycogen stores and increase my energy because the last tournament I played, I died after like 2 games. I know I said I played in a tournament the week before my show. It didn't go well. I felt great for maybe 2 hours of my 8 hour day, but I could
Um,
barely move at the end. And so immediately to go after a show into something, I was like, okay, I need food in my body. I need to replenish myself on top of wanting to eat more different foods that I haven't had in forever. There was a goal of I wanted to at least gain 10 to 15 pounds pretty quickly to replace my energy, but that sucked for essentially the entire summer. My hormones were so out of whack. I had incredible, insatiable cravings that I don't have. Like, I don't really like chocolate, but I found that for the like 3 weeks to a month after my show, I was eating every old chocolate bar that was in my house. Like, these things were like 2, 3, 4 years old. The big lint things, I was destroying those
Hide your
just because I
chocolate bars
couldn't
from
not
Tanner.
eat them. And I like every tournament I played last summer, I didn't feel good at all. So, like, I started drinking again, but not specifically that. It was more so the food I was eating. My Everything was out of whack. Nothing was feeling like it should have, and I just felt uncomfortable essentially for the whole summer. Um, and then I went on a trip to Europe. I didn't really train or do anything during that for the month. And then when I got back, it was like, okay, it's time to recenter, focus on myself again, get back to the grindstone. And this was in November. I started like getting back in the gym again. But for those next months, it kind of was rough because I was used to lifting a lot of weight, feeling really great, having everything dialed in. I was also taking a bunch of vitamins the entire time of my prep, and then I went cold turkey the day after my prep because I ran out. And I think that had a huge component on everything as well. So I got back to daily vitamins as well. And it took like a 3 month period before I even started to feel decent in the gym again because I started gaining weight. I was um, I was dealing with a lot of random health issues. There was a really bad COVID spike at the beginning of the year, and I was basically unable to work out for like 2 weeks. And so that really sucked. And I was like, I want to make a difference. I want to change how I did it this past summer. And that led me to how I was considering this summer was going to go. And when I thought about doing the same thing, drinking and eating whatever I wanted, I did spend a lot of money last year. And I was like, I don't really want to do that again. I kind of want a reason to not go out all the time, to spend less money, save more. And so I was like, this bodybuilding show in Calgary on October the 11th honestly feels like the best time. Like I can be focused over the summer. I can eat much cleaner, feel much better for my volleyball season. And then I still have a month and a half, 2 months where I can really bear down on the prep and get just give that time to bodybuilding so I can give my best at that show. And volleyball doesn't have to suffer that way. I get what I want over the summer. And so after January was essentially when I started bulking on purpose to prep for October of this year.
Got it. So the timing of the prep actually works really well, considering that volleyball, when the peak of the volleyball playing is going on in the summer, it'll kind of be like the first 2/3 of the prep where you're not like super deprived of energy just yet. So you'll be able to still perform at a high level. And then when you get closer to October, when like the prep will be at its most difficult, there won't be as much of a demand from volleyball at that point. So you can focus like entirely on the, or at least more on the prep at that point. So the timing just seems to make a lot of sense. And also too, it sounds like as far as your preferred lifestyle for this summer goes, like keeping it a little bit quieter, not going out as much, that sort of thing. It seems to just make more sense to kind of line up the season where you compete in October and you're prepping now from the sounds of things.
Totally. I think that both of my hobbies can coincide and help each other, essentially.
Got it. I want to ask you more questions about how this prep is going thus far. I know you got to run pretty quick here.
No, it's okay. We can keep going.
Okay. Well, maybe what we can do is I have one question I really want to ask you about. Well, maybe it's not so much of a question. Maybe it's an observation that we could talk more about. I'll ask that and see if we still have time because I don't want to keep you away from what you got coming up. And then if we still have a little bit of time, maybe we can talk about your current prep. If not, it'd be awesome to talk again when
Sure.
when you either get closer to October or after you compete, and we can talk about like how the October show, how it went at that point. That'd be
Sure.
awesome too. Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, what I was gonna say was, I think it's really helpful for people to hear and to know and to realize that I just think that we put a lot of emphasis, especially for people that haven't done preps before. We think entirely about the prep and the competitions themselves and not so much about the potential fallout that can come after the season. Like finishing the season, finishing the last competition is like, for a lot of people, I know it was for me too, for my the first couple times that I did preps, like I wasn't thinking about what happens after prep ends. And I think that it can kind of sneak up on people where things happen like what you experience, where all of a sudden like your life structure changes, the way that you eat really changes, and you have all these cravings left over and your energy levels still feel out of whack. And then there's potential rapid weight gain. So that's what I wanted to ask you. When you had all those cravings and you're trying to like refuel yourself for volleyball after that, I'm assuming like when you mentioned like you're craving like chocolate all of the sudden and like you felt really off, like did you gain a lot of weight quickly as well too, or was it mostly like you're just kind of feeling off?
No, I gained. So my stage weight was between, I think the second show was 167 pounds and 170 for the first show. I gained legitimately 15 pounds in a week and a half. That didn't go away. There was a lot of water weight and a lot of extra that was being added on, but I stayed at that like 185 to 190 pounds basically 2 weeks after my show, which was not good. That was way more than I should have put on.
Did you find that the tough part about that was, like, how it left you physically feeling and performing? Or did you find that a big part of the struggle was, like, seeing yourself or just feeling the way that you were fitting it into your clothes, with the extra weight, the extra body fat?
I would say it was the performance aspect. It's yes, not being able to see your striations entirely the whole time is kind of sad, but I didn't really that didn't really upset me. It was specifically performance and mood and energy. All of those things just felt bad. It's so nice when you're in a, at least I enjoy being in a routine and just like having something to look forward to or knowing what's going to happen next. And the inconsistency paired with everything else was just not the way I would ever want to do it again.
That's really interesting. I'm similar. I think it can go different ways for people from what I've observed. Like some people tend to really struggle with the added weight gain that can happen after and like looking in the mirror and being really uncomfortable with not like having all the striations that you work months, weeks and weeks and months for, and all of a sudden really quickly that all disappears and that can be really tough. But I've been similar to you where it's not so much that that's bothered me because I usually gain weight pretty quickly after a lot of my competitions too. It's like the not having the same structure anymore, not having the same goal. I try to make a point of having some kind of goal at this point after having done a lot of preps in the present, but for the first couple, I've that was what I found to be really tough was not having the same kind of like laser focus on a specific goal. All of a sudden that structure is kind of not the same anymore. Do you have like I know this is months away still, but do you have a plan for after you finish your competition in October? Are you gonna like do some kind of a reverse diet? Are you gonna like continue eating the same kind of meals but just add incrementally more calories to them? Or have you thought that far ahead yet?
To an extent, I know that I want to have a plan. And in my mind right now, that plan would be just pulling back some of the layers on the meals that I already eat because I enjoy them and I really like the meals I eat all of the time. So it would be, if I had to say right now what my plan would be, it would just to be adding calories back to all of the meals that I'm currently eating. But I think the main issue was all of the excess snacking that I did last time of just highly calorie dense foods and a ton of fat. I don't know specifically how you feel when you alternate your carbs, fats, and proteins in your macros, but I know that when I have 100 plus grams of fat in my diet, I don't feel very good. So I typically like keeping my fats around 75 just normally, um, because then I just feel better. My skin's a lot clearer. Mentally, I'm a lot clearer. And I find that when I'm eating those excess snacks that have a lot of fat in them, I just don't feel very good.
Right. That makes sense. Cool. I guess my last question for you for today, because I still do have more questions, but you're in your prep right now. What's your what is your goal for this season? This is your pro debut, right? So what's your goal? Do you have any expectations, or what do you expect to get from, or how do you expect to do? What do you want to get from the October show?
My goal in that show is specifically to place top 3 at the event and be invited to perform to go to Worlds and compete at Worlds as well. Where I place in the top 3 is doesn't really matter to me. I think this goal is specifically I wanna go to Worlds. I wanna have that story to tell my kids one day and be like, "Hey, I went to world bodybuilding competition," like, that would be incredibly cool. Now, what medals around my neck when I get invited doesn't really matter to me, but just to know that I was up there in that conversation and they were judging me compared to these other 2 people who look amazing too, I imagine, um, is incredible. And then at Worlds, I have no idea what's gonna happen. For that one, I don't really have an indication of where I wanna place. Obviously, first is where I want to place, but I'm just happy going to that event, and I'm gonna bring the best package I can bring, and we're gonna have fun.
That's amazing. I love it. And Worlds this year is in Los Angeles, right? So you get to go to
Yeah.
California. It's a
Yeah.
nice place. Nice place to end a
Uh-huh.
season too. You get to be like compared with the best in the world, best of the
Mhm.
world. That's awesome, man. Well, I know you're gonna crush it. It'd be awesome if we meet up again around
Yeah,
the
for
time of
sure.
that competition, maybe after, when you kind of recuperate a little bit, recover. But it'd be awesome if we could talk again and converse a little bit about how the prep ends up going.
For sure. I'd be happy to do this again. It was fun.
Sweet. Cool. Well, thanks so much for this, Tanner. I've really enjoyed it. I know you're gonna absolutely crush the rest of your prep. You're this is like you're in the second month of it, right?
Yeah, about there.
Yeah. Well, I know you're gonna absolutely crush it. You look fantastic. I've seen stage photos of you from your last competitions. You looked amazing, and you're only gonna look better this time around. So I'm really pumped for you.
Thank you.